Okay, it looks like the recording is starting. Cool. If anyone has their mic on, please turn it off so that way there's no feedback in the recording. Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to this year's HOPWA kickoff webinar. So nice to see all of you, to make your acquaintance, to really showcase who we are at IHCDA. For those of you who have not seen me yet or know who I am, my name is Nilufar Asgari. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the Community Services Grants Analyst at IHCDA. I've been in my position since May of this year, and I've been working with Rachel and a lot of really great people on the team to make sure that everyone is getting their awards situated, making sure that we're keeping all of our grants going, and really being a resource for you guys, since you know all of you have the expertise within your local communities, and we are just here as that support. One thing I do want to let you know, especially just so you know a little bit more about me, I come from the public health world, not specifically within HIV, but more so within mental health. And so it's been a really great honor to be in the housing world where, we see that health and housing intersect a lot. Your housing impacts your health outcomes and vice versa. It's something that I'm sure all of you have seen administering the HOPWA program. Um, we have a lot of material to cover. Some of it is new, some of it will all just be reminders. And so I'm sure a lot of questions will be coming up as we go through that. So if you have any of those questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Our team will address those after the material has been presented. Okay, let me see if it'll move. All right. So first, I'm going to talk about what our goals at IHCDA are for the HOPWA program and re-summarize the components of a HOPWA award. I'll then talk about the status of the 2023 awards, which all of you should have received email from us about that. We'll also talk about different requirements and agency-wide policies, which you see on the slide, range from financial management training all the way down to how to track your staff time accurately. We'll also talk about claims deadlines, budget modifications, any discussion that needs to be had on late claims approval. We'll talk about that here, and we'll then address questions at the end. Okay. So overall, we have 3 broad goals for our HOPWA program. One of those goals is to make sure that above all else, that we're funding programs that make sure that housing and health resources are supporting those that are living with HIV, as well as those in their household, their loved ones, etc. Second, we want to make sure that all of you are able to spend the entirety of your awards while also maintaining compliance with any HUD regulations on spending, as well as anything on program operations and development. And so it makes sense to talk about, of course, the components of your award. So many of you are using your HOPWA funds for TBRA, which provides ongoing monthly rent and utility subsidies to clients for rental housing. And some of you also use your TBRA funding for long-term program delivery, which allows you to claim staff time and supplies that are directly related to administering that long-term assistance. Now, I want to call into attention a very thoughtful inquiry that we received about our policy regarding the length of TBRA. So from what I've been hearing, it sounds like IHCDA has had TBRA go up for 2 years per client. However, HUD itself does not give a limit to the amount of time that you can have a client receive this assistance. So with this inquiry in mind, it's inspired us to start reviewing the process of why the current 2-year limit was instituted, what we would need to do to amend that, and of course, what the new policy will be. We really want this to be in conversation with you, especially since you're all working directly with the communities that you're serving. And so, since you know what's going on in your region, in your community, um, expect us, most likely me, to contact you within either the coming weeks or months so that we can hear your thoughts on how you feel about that 2-year limit and what would be helpful in making you more effective in administering this assistance. So until those changes are announced, until we have something to provide, we ask that you keep abiding with the current policy with that understanding that there will be more development on how we administer TBRA in the future. Just as a gentle reminder, we also have the ineligible expenses highlighted here. Now, you may have noticed that security deposits has a little asterisk next to it, and that is because it is eligible under permanent housing placement and not TBRA. That's really the only reason. Otherwise, these are what are commonly ineligible under TBRA. Now we're going to talk about STIRMU. I won't go too much into depth because I know that all of you administer it, but just as a reminder to anyone on the call, it's a preventative program that provides mortgage, rent, and utility assistance for a short amount of time. That it allows you to administer 21 weeks of assistance within a 52-week period. And in addition to claiming STIRMU funds, you can also claim for the staff time that you spend administering the STIRMU program. The program delivery line does not address the actual service itself. So if you're serving a client, make sure that it's being claimed under STIRMU broadly instead of short-term program delivery or large-term program delivery. So I am sharing a screenshot of this comparison that we have with TBRA and STIRMU. This table was brought from the HUD Exchange. When you look into the slides later, you can see the handout where it talks about how TBRA and STIRMU are similar and different. So this is more of an extra research for you resource, especially as you figure out what is more effective for you and what you're interested in administering for your clients. In addition to TBRA and STIRMU, there's also supportive services. So just for everyone's FYI, whether it's like daycare, personal assistance, or health, you can help give that resource out to clients. It can be used independently of any housing activity. It's also a part of any other HOPWA assisted activity. So just so you know, any time that you spend on supportive services can specifically be claimed under supportive services. Housing information is more of that counseling aspect, that more of that conversational piece. It may include fair housing. It may just be a general conversation broadly about options. And so whether it's that or informational materials, housing information is meant to be that resource for you. With housing information services, you cannot use it for credit checks, application fees, or security deposits, mostly because there are other funding avenues for this. Next is the permanent housing placement line item. This helps clients establish a new residence where ongoing occupancy is expected to continue. So when you think about what this could mean, it could mean, again, those application fees, the money that you pay to check someone's credit, first month's rent, the security deposit. It can also pay for that one-time fee to connect someone's utilities. Unfortunately, permanent housing placement does not pay for moving services or for recurring costs. It also does not pay for standard household furnishings. Now we're going into facility-based assistance, and we'll bring out more information about this line item as we read more into the regulations. But based on what we have in our current manual and materials, this is really associated with housing that's connected to a specific facility or project. For all intents and purposes, this could really be helpful for any sort of project-based assistance. So if you're doing project-based rental assistance, that works. You can use it for maintenance, security, operations, insurance. There's a whole variety of reasons that you can use it for. Now, there's also costs associated with operating the facility. Sometimes if there's a larger project that needs to go on, we will need documentation of that. We'll need to make sure that the bids for any services above $500 that are non-emergency, make sure you get bids. Let me just make that clear. Make it easier. Get bids. If you have a project that will be more than $500, you'll need a minimum of 2. If you have a project over 5,000, you'll need a minimum of 3. The last component of your award includes administration. You can spend 7% of your award on this line item. This means you can use it on office supplies, the cost of rent and utilities for your office space. You can use it for even the staff time that you spend creating reports or compiling claims. So, really capitalize on this if you are working on reports for us or are otherwise submitting your monthly claims. This cannot be used in conjunction with the cost that are directly associated with any other HOPWA activity, and it cannot be used for employee bonuses. All right, so now that we've gone over the components of your award, I'll talk about the status of your awards. All of you have signed your agreements, so thank you, everyone. We've also created and funded those on IHCDA Online, and we sent out a email that allows you to request late claims approval when you submit your claim. So when you're doing your claim from July to September, make sure to attach that email into your claim submission. If you do not have it, please let us know and we'll make sure that we get that to you. Okay, now we're going to talk about monitoring. So keep in mind, this won't apply to anyone on the call right now. This will apply in the future though. So in the future, if you have any open finding, please work with our monitoring team to resolve within the timeline that they give. Now, we understand that sometimes life comes up. There are factors beyond anyone's control. So if that comes up, please be sure to let us know, let the monitoring team know, so that we can work on figuring out what that timeline would be. If we don't have that communication, it'll be a little hard for us to make sure that everything is okay. So it will make it to where we may have to make you unable to submit your claim until you resolve the finding. If you have any concerns about whether you're affected by that, we at IHCDA will let you know. However, if you close out your findings in a timely manner, this won't apply to you because you'll be able to submit your claim. Okay. Now, we also want to talk about how to claim staff time. So one thing of note, and this is so, some of you may have noticed this, some of you may have not, but there are times where you'll need to provide more documentation than what our claims team may require. And part of the reason we want to talk about this is because our claims team, they review claims from all of the awards that our agency gives out for all programs all throughout the state. And because it's a lot to go through, they're not going to have the same capacity to go into the specific detail that our monitoring team will then go through. So if you're finding that there is, you know, that confusion, it is largely because monitoring looks at what happens after the claim has been submitted. And so when it comes to how to claim staff time, be sure to provide all of the following that are listed on the slides. You want to provide the activity or activities that were conducted. You want to let us know how much you're claiming for that activity. That could be like an hourly rate or whatever amount is appropriate for that. We want to make sure that we understand the corresponding funding stream that is associated with that activity. Is it a part of TBRA? Is it a part of STRMU? Is it administration? Whatever it is, we want to make sure that we know how you're claiming your time. We also want to make sure that we know how much time you're spending and who the staff member is that is spending the time doing this activity. And so on the slide, I also provided examples of what would be considered insufficient in claiming staff time. If you provided the amounts of time that you spent on HOPWA without telling us what activity you did, like whether it was TBRA related, whether it was related to housing information or PHP or admin, that's not sufficient enough. We need to know the amount of time you spent doing admin, the amount of time spent doing this or that or whatever it is. We also need to know what amount of time that you spent doing HOPWA activities. So make sure you have that amount. Make sure you specify the staff member involved. So if you have any questions about how you've been doing it, go back to your systems, go back to your procedures, see what you've been doing, make those updates as needed, so then you'll have a much smoother monitoring process. Now, budget amendments. So your agreement does allow you to do one budget modification per year. Now, I say this with a caveat. We understand that, again, things happen, plans change, the needs of clients may change. And so if, let's say, you find out that you did one already and you need to do another one, if you find out that that's the case, let us know the situation. Oftentimes we can either A, help you figure out how to spend the funds within your current budget, or B, send you the budget modification form and approve of that budget. One thing we want to keep in mind, be judicious in selecting when you do that modification. Timing is everything. Be sure that you modify your budget first and then claim, because that's going to give you a clearer picture of what you have allowable for you on IHCDA online. When you're doing your modifications, check to make sure that you abide by the percentages that are allowable in the budget modification sheet. You don't want to go over the maximum or not hit the minimum. And keep in mind, everyone, that when it comes to submitting your last claim on an award, like if you have an open claim submission and there's still funding associated with that, we can't move the money that's held up. So be sure to zero your unsubmitted claim on IHCDA online. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, we did communicate late claims, deadlines, and the conditions that you can use that email. If you have not received that email, please let us know, and we will get that to you so that you can submit for July to September. With October and all months moving forward, the claims will be due on the 20th of every month, which is also in your agreement. As a courtesy, we'll send you a monthly reminder letting you know that the claims are due. So let's say November comes around and you need to claim for October. We'll give you a reminder letting you know that you have a claim due. If let's say it's, I don't know, March and you need to claim for February, we'll let you know that you have a February claim due on March 20th. So with that in mind, because we've communicated about this, we won't really give any further extensions unless you can demonstrate that there have been factors out of your control or otherwise showcase that, life just happened and you needed extra time. When you're doing your claim, be conscientious in checking for accuracy. When there's mistakes, it holds up when we can get things approved. It holds up the claims team ability to evaluate. It holds up the ability of the accounting team. So be sure to check for accuracy. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please let us know at IHCDA. If you have questions about a specific claim, we'll give you that contact information as well. If you also have questions about the specificity of your grant or what you can claim for, please feel free to contact us. We want to be open and there for you however we can. Now we're going to shift to more of the requirements. So let's start with talking about financial management training because it's definitely a big one, especially considering that you're all submitting claims and managing your awards. So if you are a staff member that is submitting or approving a claim, you need to go through HOPWA financial management training, and we would need your certificate. Now, one thing I do want to acknowledge, and this is so everyone knows that we are aware of this. I went through the links trying to find the course, and it looks like HUD has taken down the course so that they can update the information in that course. They've also indicated on the manual that the content does not reflect 2 CFR 200 requirements. So with this in mind, at IHCDA, we're going to check biweekly to see when it comes back up, and then we'll send you an announcement letting you know that HUD has put the course back up online. Once you get that email from us, you'll have 6 months to complete that updated training. If you have already completed it, I don't think this will apply for you, but if you have new staff, then this will definitely apply. We're also going to talk about Violence Against Women Act, VAWA for short. And so I want to give just some contextual information about VAWA. We want to make sure that it's clear that we're talking about this because agencies are required to comply with the updated VAWA regulations when they're either administering or managing their HOPWA program. And so keep in mind, this act, it's been around since 1994, and it's provided broader protections for those who have experienced domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. However, in 2013, there have been additions to provide housing protections for these survivors. And this has been required in the HOPWA program specifically for any project that has been committed on or after December 16th, 2016. In the next year, in 2017, emergency transfer plans were required. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but that's where that comes from. And then, of course, in 2022, there have been updates to the VAWA regulations. We've included a link for you to read VAWA in its entirety, as well as a link to the recent training that had been done by the Technical Assistance Collaborative that is available on the HUD Exchange. VAWA broadly applies to these particular HOPWA activities: rental assistance, either TBRA or PBRA, new construction, operation costs, community residences, or anything having to do with acquisition, rehabilitation, conversion, leasing, or the repair of facilities. And while it does not provide specifically apply to SERMU, it does, however, let you know that no individual can be denied assistance, have their assistance terminated, or be removed on the basis or as a direct result of the fact that that individual had experienced one of the 4 types of VAWA abuse and violence. This part right here summarizes part of the training that was done on the HUD Exchange that was provided by Tech, and it lets you know what VAWA protections do and don't apply in these cases. I won't read this slide in depth because it's way too much information, and I understand that it would get pretty boring to want to listen to this, but we do want to talk about the fact that HUD, well, not HUD, but VAWA has been recertified to include a new definition of domestic violence. So domestic violence includes felony or misdemeanor crimes that have been committed by a current or former spouse or an intimate partner of the victim. This can be under the family or domestic violence laws of the jurisdiction that receives grant funding. And also it includes the use or attempted use of physical or sexual abuse or any other coercive behavior like verbal abuse, psychological, economic, and technological abuse that may or may not constitute criminal behavior. This is more likely to apply within the case of victim services. We have the regulation right here on the bottom. So if you would like to read this from the government itself, it's right there. We also wanted to let you know that domestic violence now includes economic and technological abuse, which I alluded to in the previous slide. I won't fully read the definitions for both, but you do have that reference. It includes both the original language in the slide and the hyperlinks that you'll be able to click on when we send you the slide deck. The definitions for economic and technological abuse are new, so they didn't exist previously. So just so everyone knows, economic abuse, it's coercive, deceptive, or any other abuse that basically stops someone from using or maintaining the economic resources that they're entitled to. With technological abuse, it's abuse that utilizes any form of technology. VAWA also has an update on the prohibition on retaliation. Basically, it's illegal for a PHA, an owner, or a manager of a covered housing unit to discriminate against someone who has experienced one of those 4 crimes because of their opposition towards it, or because the person testified, assisted, or participated in any related manner. It's also illegal for a PHA owner or a manager to coerce, intimidate, threaten, interfere with, or retaliate against any person who exercises or assists or encourages a person to exercise any rights or protections under VAWA's housing provisions. This means, in layman's terms, that PHAs, owners, and managers cannot stop you from getting your VAWA rights. You also have the right to report a crime or an emergency as it relates to VAWA. According to the regulation, it prohibits PHAs from penalizing or threatening to penalize a person because they requested assistance. And it also allows people to report criminal activity of which they are a victim of. So no PHA owner or manager can stop you from reporting or retaliate against you for reporting, at least not according to this regulation. We have the letter cited here, as well as the specific regulations in the slide, if you'd like to read them further. VAWA 2022 also basically gives HUD the power to enforce those VAWA protections, and they do so under the Fair Housing Act. If you would like to read more about this process, we have the notice itself written here. You can click on it once you are reviewing the slides at a later date. Okay. Here is just a resource of all of the relevant forms that not HOPWA. These are all the relevant forms that you may use for your VAWA compliance. These are all forms that I looked for from the HUD pages. They're all made by HUD. I made sure to make it very easy to read. You can just click on those once you get the slide deck, and you should be able to see what those model forms look like. Okay, now I'm sure all of you enjoyed, or at least really tried to enjoy, the lead-based paint training that Kate Marshall had given for all of you. And so if you need any repeat of the material, if you need to go back and learn more about lead-based paint, we'll have the link here. One thing we want to let you know is that we want to make sure that you're doing the work that you need to comply with the regulations during your inspections. All right, now we're going to talk about confidentiality. This is the big one, because of course we all know that all of you take confidentiality very seriously, especially given the risk of a whole lot of bad outcomes happening for our clients. With that said, we also know that sometimes confidentiality can be breached inadvertently, and we want to make sure that we give you the resources or things to be mindful of as you make sure that you're protecting your clients. So again, technology changes, technology advances, the risk of outing a client may also change. And therefore, you may have to look into new ways to protect your client so that their diagnosis is not out in the open to landlords and other stakeholders. And so you'll really want to check your letterhead for the name of your agency. For those of you that have HIV or AIDS in the name of your agency, you may want to consider using a DBA name of agency if you have one. DBA stands for doing business as. If you do not have one, consider getting one and going through the process of making sure that you can have one. Also, with the invention of the internet, phone numbers, email addresses, they're all Googleable. So be mindful of that as you communicate with landlords and other stakeholders, and make sure that you have a PO box listed on your forms. make sure that you also have an email domain that doesn't necessarily out the client and their status. Okay. And again, we want to also make sure that benefits are not inadvertently duplicated, because HUD does not like for clients to get benefits from more than one program. So if you would like to take steps to minimize that, check your records consistently, keep them up to date. If anything, you can use HMIS. Look at the client's record in there, and you can use that to identify if they're getting duplicative assistance. If you don't have a policy on this already, consider creating that policy to prevent the duplication of benefits. Okay, now we're going to talk about another item, the program income. So starting this year, monitoring will definitely be ensuring that everyone is reporting on program income. Whether you have program income or you do not, you're going to have to report it. You'll report it in December and June, and you'll need to spend that program income before the award is closed out. We will send you a form on Excel that allows you to let us know whether you have program income or not. In your form, you can check whether you do have program income or you do not. If you do not have program income, you won't really have to go too much further in the application because you'll have nothing to report. If you do, then it may take you a little bit more time because you'd have to actually report the income. When it comes to figuring out what you'd need to report, please let us know because we'll be happy to help you. Make sure that you have the resources that you need and understand what needs to be reported. One thing that we do want to call attention to, return deposits are really the most common type of program income. And I anticipate that it looks like that will most likely be what applies for all of you. Just so we're clear, fundraising money is not program income. HUD has specifically said that money that you fundraise for your organization does not count as program income. Okay, now this slide mostly just summarizes a lot of what we talked about. When it comes to being compliant with your award, and of course, having a much more smoother claim submission and monitoring process. When you are going through the administration of your award and you're claiming it, make sure you're tracking your staff time. Make sure you track by the activity component and give us the information that we need and not just saying, oh, I spent 8 hours on HOPWA. We know that while it's great that you spent 8 hours that day on HOPWA, we would need to also know how much of those 8 hours went to TBRA, how much went to STIRMU, supportive services, and so on and so forth. Stay up to date on your VAWA requirements and make sure that all of those forms that are linked in the slide are interweaved in your work with clients. So we want to make sure that the clients that do face any of those horrible experiences are able to have the protections that they need and the support that they would need in order to be safe from their abuser or from any other entity that wants to hurt them. We also want to make sure that all of you are doing your utmost best to maintain confidentiality of client files and information. Again, we know that you all take privacy very seriously. We also want to make sure that we communicate this information to you so that you know that with all the work that's being done, that confidentiality is something to still think about. When in doubt, meet your deadlines. Just if it's a claim that you need to submit, meet the deadline. If there's a report that you need to get to us, if there's a specific document that we need, we'll let you know of when we need those by. And we'll also, of course, let you know if we have any questions from you based on those documents. Again, when in doubt, ask IHCDA staff. We are here for you. Rachel is on the call. We have members of our claims team and our monitoring team here. So we want to make sure that you know that we're here. And to really highlight that, here is all of our contact information. If you have a general inquiry, um, please send it to the community services inbox. If you have specific questions about your award, you can send it to me directly or to Rachel. One of us will likely be able to answer. If you have a question about a specific claim that you're working on and the status of that claim, we have our wonderful financial operations specialist, Amber Hardwick, who is, her email is right there. Their email is right there. And you can also submit any claims questions to the claims inbox at ihcda.in.gov. So with that, I will now, let this be open for questions. From what I see, it looks like Rachel has been answering some in the chat. So shout out to Rachel. I can also scroll back up and see if there's any that we missed. You can also raise your hand if you would like to verbally ask your question. Let me see if I missed anything that was answered.
As you look at that, Nilufar, I just want to quickly say thank you to everybody who's participating in attendance today. And also to just kind of highlight some of those requirements that we went over today are actually in direct response to the HUD monitoring that we went through this last year. So those of you who were either monitored by Kate or were monitored with us alongside with us with HUD, a lot of what we went over today was as a direct result of some things we observed or some direct corrections we were asked to make by HUD. And in particular, I'm just going to call out the financial management training and highlight one detail that we will reiterate when we hopefully hear from HUD that financial management training is live and back in action. Our current policy on the financial management training had to be updated because it did not specify how recent someone had to have received that training and that all folks who were working on claims needed to complete it. So I just kind of want to reiterate first that if you are somebody that is working on HOPWA claims, if anybody on your team is doing that, they need to have completed that financial management training. And then to retain that certificate that you receive upon completion. Like Nilufar alluded to, that training is down right now, so we hope it will be back up soon. And then we're going to allow folks 6 months to comply with that, and we'll be following up with people to make sure that everybody on the team has received that training. We are going to ask that folks have completed that within the last 5 years. So I know there's a couple of folks who've been doing HOPWA for 10 plus years, and we want folks to have done it at least once every 5 years. So we're not going to ask for annual compliance on that, but your certificate that you receive will have a date on it, or your certificate you currently have has a date on it. And as long as that date is within the last 5 years, we're good. But I would anticipate with them making these changes to the HOPWA financial management training, we'll likely be advising folks to redo that training, which is one reason why we're trying to provide that 6-month window to complete, because that new financial management training may have some additional information. We won't know that until we see it, though. And one reason we wanted to provide that leeway to folks to complete that. So we will, as a part of, like Nilufar alluded to, following up with you when hopefully that training goes live again and is accessible. We will be reaching out to you and providing that direct guidance on how we're going to verify that everybody's completed that, since that was a requirement from our HUD monitoring, and we want to make sure we stay in good compliance with that component. Thank you. And I see Bethany has a question, so I'll go back to you, Nilufar.
Thank you. So Bethany had asked, can long-term and short-term delivery be used to pay for a percentage of fringe benefits equal to the percentage of time staff is spending on these activities? I believe the answer is yes.
Yeah, so can HOPWA pay for allocated costs, I think is kind of what we're alluding to, and,
Yes.
I believe that it can. I'll need to defer to Nilufar, though.
Hmm. Yes. We also have time for more questions, so don't be shy.
And I guess I'll also tag on from Bethany's question. We are working as a community services team to get really familiar with HUD's requirements on allocated costs and indirect costs. So look for more information from our team in the next, probably 8 months on providing folks some guidance on how you can use indirect cost acceptable practices like a 10% de minimis or cost allocation plan. If that's something you'd like to learn more about, we'll definitely be releasing more of information about in the future. I know some of our agencies are quite large healthcare-based organizations, so you've got that. You've got a whole team that's figured that out for you, but some of our smaller partners may benefit from being able to bill some of those indirect costs. So look out for more information there soon.
Okay. Are there any other questions that anyone has? Okay. All right. So if that's the case, then it looks like we're giving you back some of your time. Thank you for logging on. Thank you for the time that you've spent with us. It's been great having you and great to make your acquaintance. We definitely look forward to working with you further, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.